Most people don't understand that there's value in websites. Making around anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 a month net off that. We make money while we sleep. It is beautiful. Check your bank account. There's an affiliate commission being paid. And I don't speak to the clients.
I'm Garret Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? Before this episode starts, I have a small favor to ask from you. 88% of the people that watch or listen to this channel did not subscribe. My goal is 50%. So if you've ever liked any of the videos or podcasts we've posted, if you like this channel, can you do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, as you've seen, the bigger the guests get. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Garret. Great to be here.
Yes. So audience, Matt Raad is going to be piquing our interest, let's say, with a different type of asset. But before we get into that, I always love to start with your background, Matt. Why don't you give the audience a taste?
Sure. So probably like most of your listeners, Garret, my wife and I always were looking for financial freedom. We were actually studying zoology, which people find amazing, and then we became business entrepreneurs. So the reason why that's an important story is we come from the country, and we both wanted not just financial freedom, but freedom to work from home, and primarily keep living in the country back then. And so we realized very quickly zoology was not going to do that for us. So as soon as we finished university, we got into there's a whole story behind it, but we got into our first business, and basically we're addicted from day one to business. And we, a little bit different though to yourself and all of probably your listeners, and this is why we often get asked to speak about our journey. We did things quite differently in our careers. We went for business and high cash flow to generate significant wealth rather than traditional real estate. So we're based in Australia, as you can probably tell from my accent. And, a lot of friends like yourself, Garret, and like a lot of your listeners, they do the real estate thing, and it generates a lot of wealth. It's a really good way to become wealthy. But for us, that wasn't our path. We went instead for the cash flow. We were lucky. We had a mentor many years ago say to us, cash flow first before you start investing. And that means buying and selling businesses. So basically our career has been buying for the last 30 odd years, been buying and selling businesses. And what happened was when we had a family, we realized, and also it was around a time where I guess that the internet was really starting to take off. We started watching the online business space, and around 2008, the GFC, we decided to make the full-time move to online businesses, and it just went really, really well for us. It was a lot quicker than traditional bricks and mortar businesses, but for us, it was I think like a lot of us back then, Garret, we all read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we realized online businesses literally ticked every single box that Robert Kiyosaki wrote about all those years ago. I remember he used to talk about, buying these businesses that you can have people run, like, laundromats and car washes, things that are semi-passive. Well, internet businesses are like that, but they're actually heaps easier.
Wow. Zoology.
Yeah.
I don't know if you did any research on me, because I did a ton on you for background, but so I quit molecular biology to go into real estate. So,
all right. Oh,
yeah,
well, you would understand our honours thesis
because
my wife studied the heart, so mitochondrial densities, and
okay.
I did, believe it or not, was Australia's leading expert on the anatomy of red kangaroos. I won a scholarship to keep. It was groundbreaking work, all that sort of stuff, but I handed the money back so that I could go into the business.
Okay.
I literally was addicted within about 48 hours, I reckon, when we bought this first business. And it was crazy it was a small manufacturing business. And we made every mistake that a beginner entrepreneur makes. We don't come from a family of entrepreneurs at all. It was crazy. It was back in the days when you could do, you could borrow money off friends, family, and the bank a bit later on. And we somehow built that up so that because when we bought it, we made every single mistake and we had no idea what we're doing. And the accountant at the time told us it was a good business, and it wasn't. Once we took it over, we realized it was going bankrupt, and that was pretty scary time. So we just basically worked our butts out and we figured out how to turn it around. And that was just through sales. We totally self-taught. We listened to tapes, like Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Tommy Hopkins. Those guys made us so much money. We had no idea what we were doing, but we just figured if we get more sales, this will turn this business around somehow. Don't even worry about expenses and stuff. And it worked. And to this day, that's how we turn around business. We got really good at turning around businesses quite quickly and getting the cash flows right up. So for Liz and I, we both come from, poor backgrounds, the usual kind of story. And so cash flow for us was incredibly important, particularly as young entrepreneurs. And then as we got older, we realized, turns out all you real estate investors realize, wow, cash flow is really important because you max out with the banks at some point if you're gearing up to buy lots of property. So you can be very asset rich, but cash flow poor. And we never, I guess one of my drivers was to never be poor again. So I didn't even care about being asset rich at that time. I just wanted to make sure we always had high cash flow. And we didn't want to work 9 to 5. So the only way to do it is through a business.
Wow. Super interesting. Let's back up a second, because what was your mindset going from the sciences and then just into business? What was the driver?
I think really interesting question. One good thing, as you would know, Garret, when you study science, I think it teaches you to be inquisitive and curious and figure stuff out and test theories. That's what we're doing. You know how you're always investigating. And so I think for us, business was a very natural fit. It was actually quite easy. Mindset-wise, it was, I'll be honest about it. For me, it was a way out of poverty. I could just see if we can get this business working, I can become seriously rich here. And I wanted that ever since I was a kid because we never had that. I never had that as a kid. My mum was a single mum until she remarried and we moved out onto a farm and everything. But even my dad or my stepdad, that it was really tough for mum and dad back in Australia. As a farm manager, you don't earn much money. And so money was really tight. So I think for me, my mindset growing up, probably like a lot of your listeners, was I really, really wanted financial freedom. And honestly, as soon as I got into that business and I could see how the numbers work and the moving parts, so we were selling literally spare parts for outdoor power equipment. And I could say, all right, if we can double the prices and if we can sell more, and we can get a few more customers, then I can make a lot of money here and we can turn this around. And it's funny, that's exactly what we do online now. Whenever we buy a website, all we're looking at is, can we put the prices up or get the monetization better? Can we get more customers? And can we sell more? There's they're the key 3 things that we focus on to this day. So 30 years later, I'd like to say the strategy still works really, really well.
It's very interesting. I mean, I could make a bad joke, but I don't want to offend anybody about why would you think you could make money in academia? Because I also quit as well for the money and also just because it wasn't my ideal goal.
Yep.
But what you said there about learning from the school of hard knocks. So let's do a comparison because I'm in real estate. There isn't a lot of cash flow in real estate. And in fact, I'm one of the proponents of saying don't worry about the cash flow because it's all about, especially in the single family home space, there's not a lot of cash flow, if anything. I mean, if you're making $100 after property management fees, consider yourself lucky. So it's always the equity pay down, the appreciation of the asset. So I think I've kind of, gotten used to / trained myself to be thinking in low cash flow points of view. So then when it was a natural thing for me to open up a property management company, and now it's been like 25, 26 years, you just get used to low cash flow. And I've been in this cycle Just recently, only at the last couple of weeks now, I'm starting to like get some business training, some mentors, and really starting to see, okay, alternative verticals, business units, different types of businesses. Why can't you
Yep.
make a lot of cash flow? It's very interesting to me that your first business foray taught you right away, right out of the gate, that cash flow is king.
Yep. And it's funny, Garrett, really important, and something you just touched on there that really perked up my ears is what we've done over the years. Is you said you're getting some coaching or some mentors and things, and it's opening your eyes to other ideas and cash flow. That's what Liz and I did as a key thing when we started out in business. So if you are listening to this podcast, you look at people like myself and Garrett and you think, wow, look at the journey, but look how long it took us both. So Garrett,
Yes.
for me, it's over 30 years. I'm in my 50s, and you're way younger than that, obviously, but in
No,
your
I thank you, Matt, but I'm 53, so
oh, same.
yeah,
Well,
I
I'm
just look good
54,
on
but
camera.
yeah, 50. Well, there you go. You look younger, but 54. But for someone listening to this, it's easy to look at people like us, isn't it, and go, oh, wow, they do this. What you got to understand is, here's my bit of advice to someone listening to this, something Garrett just touched on and is a big part of Liz and my story, which people don't focus on enough, is when we first got in that business, because it was struggling, we had to seek out mentors. And some of them were paid, some of them weren't. But the first ones were literally reading books. We had so little money. The first book I ever bought on business, which was after day one, was I went to my local Vinnies. Do you have Vinnies in Canada? Op
No.
shops,
Sure. Okay.
charity
Yep.
stores, and they had the chuck out books. And I bought a book on there by Mark McCormack, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. And it was 60 cents. I've still got it. It sits in my shelf
Love
over
it.
there. It's got a red cover. It was worn out. And I just read every word. When I look back through it now, you can see I fluoroed everything. And basically the main lesson was get more sales and you'll turn around a business. But ever since then, it set us on a mission. And we were very lucky. We hung out with other manufacturers. So our first business was a manufacturing business, and it was just when China was coming on board with manufacturing. And so here in Australia, Aussie manufacturers were really worried about the threat from cheap Chinese imports. So we used to hang out together in little groups, and I just signed up for everything. And I was really, really lucky in that I got to hang out with some really successful, very wealthy entrepreneur, very private individuals, in those grungy industrial areas that you see in every city. Think of the poorest part of the city, and there's always those industrial areas. Well, I'm telling you, the guys that own those factories there, they're multi-millionaires and they're lovely, down-to-earth people, and they just kind of taught me everything. And a lot of them reiterated this idea, go for cash flow. So I guess for me and Liz, we were really lucky in the early days. It's really interesting talking to you, and your listeners as well are probably like you. Everyone's indoctrinated in this idea of real estate. You've got to invest in real estate to make money. We were young. We didn't have a cent to our name. We're in debt to the bank to our eyeballs. Like literally every last cent we had went back into our business. So we just had to, that's how we learn. And that's why I guess we were programmed almost by our immediate mentors. It's just cash flow, just get businesses working and then buy another one and then buy another one. And I think what Liz and I were doing, we're also trying to look for the perfect business model as well and cash flow model, because different businesses have different advantages and benefits, and some are really hard to make. So our first business took 10 years to become incredibly successful with. Now, in the meantime, we bought and sold other businesses as well. And we love that, if you haven't for some bizarre reason and you want to get into business and you haven't for some bizarre reason read Rich Dad Poor Dad, to this day, it's probably still the most inspirational book I've ever read. And I think that really kicked off for us this idea of let's collect up multiple businesses. And also all our mentors were doing the same.
So, okay, you came out of zoology,
Yep.
bought this business, turned it around. But I mean, just clarify for the audience, because you're talking about not just being an entrepreneur and working the business, you're already talking about the business is the asset that you're turning around so that you can exit with a profit. Am I paraphrasing that correctly?
Yep. And because we were lucky, we started hanging around guys that were doing that.
Okay. Well, let me touch on that for a second, because there's coaches, and you use the word mentors, and both can be synonymous, but I would say that mentors is finding a mentor in whatever way, shape, or form is more important than paying a quote unquote coach, because a mentor could literally be an author of a book. You don't even have to have met them, and they can still be your mentor, because you are like literally following their teachings, versus a paid coach, which is also fine. And my second point that I want to emphasize what you said is who you hang out with, the community that you're with, that mindset, trying to get with successful people that can take you and do the things that you want to do, not somebody who also wants to do it with you, because that pathway is already there. You can see it clear as day.
Yeah, and that was super important for us. And like I said to anyone listening to this, listen to Garret. It's the people you hang around. And we used to read Talk of Mentors. Jim Rohn, remember those days? And he, I think it was him that said, you're the average of the 5 closest people to you, or the 5 people that you hang around, not just in wealth, but health and happiness. So for Liz and I, that was an important part of our journey too. We didn't just hang around guys or people that had really successful businesses. We were constantly looking for people that had happy family lives, that were healthy, and doing and had inspirational lives. And we made it a point. It was hard because we lived out in the country, and we would spend a lot of time traveling into Sydney. This was back then. We're living in southern New South Wales, and we dedicated a lot of time to networking or hanging around other business people. And that was our entire life. And then it became to the point where, also combined with we love buying and selling businesses, we started buying and selling businesses professionally as business brokers, so that that was the best way for us to increase our network. And that's when things really accelerated, because we were suddenly hanging around multimillionaires, entrepreneurs in Sydney, and private equity firms, venture capital firms, and we were kind of spotters for them. We were really good at finding good businesses. So I'd go and meet people, and back then they'd say, Matthew, we've got $40 million to spend. And I think they'd see my jaw hit the ground. This is a private equity firm, it's a private individual with a bunch of high net worth friends. And they say, we hear you're good at, you understand manufacturing businesses or wholesale import. We want an electrical wholesaler. Can you go with an EBIT of $1 million? EBIT is net profit, by the way.
Yes.
And they'd want to buy 5 or 6 of them. So I'd go out into the grungy industrial areas and door knock, and quite confidentially, or send out old-fashioned letters and through networking, and just see who wants to sell their businesses for cash. And that's kind of, and you know what, that when I think back now, we do exactly the same with websites. It's literally what we did, and we just copied what those guys were doing, where they buy up 5 or 6 and roll them up. When we got online, that's how we started. But we didn't need millions of dollars to do it. You can buy websites for like under $5,000, and you could buy 5 or 6 of them and bolt them together and build them up. So websites are really, really cool in that way. So we got to implement what our mentors were doing, but without having to borrow any more off the bank, and they were very, very high cash flow. That was the thing for us.
Okay. So I am so chomping at the bit to want to talk about the websites, but I'm still going to reel us both back.
Yeah.
Just explain to the audience the general concept of renovating a bricks and mortar business and then exiting it. Can you kind of go through that so we can do a true comparison to the online version?
Yep. So what the people that we would help were looking for is, they say they have a pool of money. So a private equity firm can be really big ones or quite small ones. We generally dealt with the smaller ones. So what they do is they pool a group of high net worth friends together, typically 5 or 6 of them. There'd be a lawyer, there would be a successful entrepreneur running it, and they might pull in. Have you heard the term? You would have, but your listeners, family offices. They're kind of like that. So for high net worths. And they would be, but they'd always be run by very experienced entrepreneurs who've done multiple exits of businesses. And what they do is they look for businesses that can be run under management. So it's kind of like the Robert Kiyosaki idea, but on steroids. But these are much bigger than laundromats and car washers. Typically, they're manufacturing or wholesale import businesses because they're pretty simple to understand. All they are is just a widget. Doesn't matter what it is, and you either buy or make it for $1 and you sell it for $2 or $3. That's basically how the businesses work. So, and then they just pick either a vertical niche or they just go for that style, and they buy them. They've got to be. It doesn't. I mean, sometimes if they're run down, they can turn them around. They put in a team to increase the sales, get more customers, increase the prices. And what you do is, if you want, what these private equity firms are really good at is creating money out of thin air by bolting 5 or 6 of these businesses together, and then the sum of them is worth a lot more than the one business by itself. So to really amplify that, what they ideally do is IPO them on the stock exchange, because the multiples
Right.
then are up in the 20 times rather than the usual 3 times, the 20 times profit. And so people make a lot of money. And this is going on every day of the week. Like, this is happening all the time. And, I'm this country kid, grew up on a farm, studied zoology, had no idea this sort of thing was going on and how simple it could work. Now, it requires money, though. These guys raise money amongst themselves. But in essence, that's what they were doing. And we were the part where we could identify these really good businesses, either good, like diamonds in the rough, rundown businesses that can easily be turned around, or a business owner that just wants to exit because they're retiring.
Show, because I just love learning about these new things. I had
Yeah.
never even considered that. I guess a website has value, but it's a company like anything else that you can buy and
It is.
sell. So take us through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So and this is the thing we find a lot. Most people don't understand that there's value in websites. So most websites online now, no matter what they do, at a very, very basic level, they'll typically have a Google ad on them. You know, those ads where you click and you go to some other website. And obviously, advertisers pay for those clicks. So you can, in inadvertent commas, rent out your website by you partner with Google, and the website becomes like an online billboard. So if there's lots of traffic coming into the website, when you read like a news site or any site, it can be any sort of site. And typically when you scroll down to the bottom, there'll be you may also like, and there'll be a bunch of, and it says sponsored ads. Well, when someone clicks on those, you as the website owner share in the revenues, and it can be anywhere from 20% to 50% of what the advertisers paid. So that, of course, is passive, because you don't have to speak to anybody. You don't have to, it works 24/7. And what you've got to do is provide a website that provides value and has visitors coming to it. And that's just one method, by the way, but that's at its base level. So what we figured out all those years ago was this is heaps easier than bricks and mortar businesses, because we don't have to keep reinvesting into inventory stock. So that was always we always had wholesale import businesses or manufacturing businesses. And so this was really cool. So all we had to do is have a website asset that is monetized either with ads or selling leads or affiliate offers. A lot of your listeners would have heard of affiliate offers. So we can also say recommend a certain product or a service. And if that person online, everything's tracked, all clicks are really accurately tracked. So if someone clicks on an affiliate link and they buy on the other site, we get a percentage. It might be 10%, might be 20%. So again, we don't have to have any physical inventory. We could recommend physical inventory and make great money. And we've got lots of clients who we've taught to do this. Say a great example to demonstrate how a web might be monetized is, say, travel blogs. So we have lifestyle entrepreneur clients, and I'm just thinking like Annette. She's now retired. She's traveling around Australia in a caravan. So in Northern America and Canada, I think you guys call it RVing.
Yes.
Here in Australia, here in Australia we call it grey nomad. You retire and you travel around Australia in a van. So while she's doing that, she's created this blog, this travel blog, to record where she goes and her journey. Now, in doing that, that's got a big following. People love it. so they love reading what she's doing. So she runs these ads on there they're all passive, but also she recommends products that they're using for their caravan. So like the tires they use, the air conditioning they use in the caravan, things like that. She's making around anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 a month net off that, just from those affiliate offers. Now that's pretty cool that's kind of a side hustle for someone that's retired. That's not bad. That pays for a lot of your travel, but it gets better. When she figured out how to do that, here's how this whole strategy comes together. She found a website, a similar person to her, in a private Facebook group that she was on for grey nomads, travelers around Australia. This lady said, look, I've been doing this for 14 years. I'm ready to actually retire from traveling around Australia. I don't want my website anymore. Does anyone want to buy it off me? And no one in the private Facebook group knew that there was a value to it. So you know how your original question was, well, what's the value in the website? Well, Annette straight away. So unless you listen to this podcast, you wouldn't realize that there's actual massive value. This is a 14-year-old website where this lady and her husband had traveled around and they'd blog. So there's all these articles about traveling around Australia. She just wanted to sell it off. And Annette was the only person, this is a big Facebook group, like tens of thousands of people, not a single person replied to her. So Annette replied to her and said, how about $5,000? And the lady said, yep, I'll take $5,000. So she got this 14-year-old travel blog. So she, of course, just combined the two. There's a technical process to that. But that then off that one website, she's making $4,000 a month now.
Okay, let me back up here because I'm sure if I have a perplexed look on my face, my listeners do as well. When somebody, quote unquote, retires, the blogs, the travel, all the things that drove people and the listeners and the readers to that website, that content's not being created anymore.
Yep.
Where are you saying because Annette is still doing that she's now producing that content, but she bought the audience?
So your question is, what's the asset there? It's the audience and the domain age and the niche. So it's like, if we think like real estate, it's kind of buying, I guess if the lady had just left that website, it'd be like buying a rundown house in the best street, because the travel niche is one of the best niches. Well, there's heaps of great niches, but you're looking for assets like that so really the domain name is kind of like the street address, the domain name / the niche, and then the website that sits on it with all the content, 14 years worth of articles and things like that, and all the work that goes into creating that, that's like the building. So what we can do is renovate that when we buy it. So really that's what's happening, and that's the asset that you're buying. So there's two parts of the asset, is the address and then the building that's on there. And it's very similar to real estate when you think about it, because you guys are looking for an address in a good suburb, or a suburb that has potential growth down the track. And you're also looking for a building that you can renovate, spend 10, 20 grand on the fix up. Well, it's exactly the same thing with websites. So we look for, ideally, there's all sorts of strategies you can follow. You can buy, really successful sites and pay premiums, or you can buy neglected sites, rundown sites, but that have a good address, are in a good niche, and they've got fundamentally some really good content on there. But more importantly, they've also got a bit of a following. They've got these things called backlinks. Aged sites have a lot of value now, particularly in this day and age of AI content. Humans want real content, real experience. And so that's becoming even more valuable. So sites like what Annette bought. So another young couple of ours, Chris and Beck, their Instagram, travel influencers, they were inspired by Annette's story. They've done exactly the same thing. Guess what? For $5,000, Garret, they literally just 2 weeks ago, Chris rang me and said he's already doing this full time. They travel around Australia. They're a young couple in their mid-20s, traveling around in an RV, four-wheel drive RV, and they make money off blogging and taking photos, and they get corporate sponsorship because they've got such a strong online presence. And Chris, same thing, found a site for sale in a private Facebook group. Someone was just, was 10 years old, didn't know the value of it, didn't care because they weren't making money out of it. And Chris just offered him $5,000, and the guy took it. There's 300 articles sitting on there, and Chris is a really good writer. And he just said, I can't possibly write those articles for $5,000. There's the value alone, it's probably $20,000 worth of content sitting on that website, and he got it for $5,000. And it comes with age, they're real articles, pictures, everything. So that's the asset there. And the asset that you also sometimes bring over is the email list or the following that comes with it, like a Facebook page. That's an incredibly valuable asset as well. So there's actually a lot of assets. We call them real hard assets with online real estate that, on the surface, unless you listen to a podcast like this, you wouldn't know there's any value in it. Like you think that the guy that owned that website, he'd had it for over a decade, just like a Nets seller. They didn't see the value in it. They just thought it was worth $5,000. That's it. But there's way more value sitting in there in the right hands when you know what you're doing.
So more questions for me. Let's say that we don't have an Annette and a Chris. Let's say it's a Garret. And I know nothing about travel blogging. I come to you, I find this website for $5,000, and I have the 300 articles, et cetera, et cetera. I understand the core concepts. Okay, it's not mobile friendly. I'm going to renovate it, give it a new facelift. There's going to be, all those different types of things. So I know I can understand the value there. But what happens if I'm not a travel blogger? How do I get the content onto the site, or do I need to?
So that's a really good question. So there's a few answers to that. It's really interesting. So generally, you don't need to be the expert, because it's really, really easy these days to hire expert writers. And so, for instance, Liz and myself, we're not. Liz is a really good writer, but we don't write anything ourselves. And the 95% of our clients, we strongly recommend they do not waste time writing the articles because they take too long, because it's so much cheaper to outsource them. And you can go to a site like upwork.com. They hire lots of freelancers. You can actually hire journalists on there now, because the journalism industry has been decimated. So you can hire them to write articles for anywhere from $30 to $50 to $100. These are professionally written. Some of them are famous journalists. They're on Upwork. We've had clients hire them. You can hire experts in any niche now. It's way easier than what it was 10, 15 years ago. There's a lot of freelancers because working from home now, especially since COVID, is a huge thing, particularly for mums. And so you can get university, PhD students, you can get mums that are working from home who have very high levels of education, and they don't want to go back to work 9 to 5. So they're happy to write articles for $30 to $50. So the good news is you can hire people. And the most important thing is your keyword research is directing that write the right things that are going to be useful, or what's called helpful, to your visitors. That's the main skill that we have so if you were to come to me and say, I've bought this site, should I be buying a travel blog? I would be saying, well, okay, do you know how to do the keyword research in that niche? Do you know what that niche needs? And then have you looked on Upwork, and can you find some writers who can help you write those articles? Now, the cool thing is, by buying a content site that has already existing old articles, 300 articles are enough to carry the website for a long time. That's the other thing. That's why we buy sites for its content, because we can strip it down and reuse it on our other sites. But all things being equal, in this day and age, if you are passionate about a site, so like you, Garret, you're an expert in real estate, you should definitely have a website around real estate, which is what you do. You do have that, and that's an asset you should build. It's definitely easier. What we've noticed over the years is it's easier for our clients to build or buy websites in niches that they're passionate about, because they can put their own unique angles into it. And also we find people stick at it for the long term a lot better as well if you're passionate about the topic.
Sure.
But the good news is, most of the sites that we own or have done over the years, including all our clients, most sites, the writers are outsourced with better writers than us. So that's your cost of reno.
Yeah, no, I get it now. Totally. I mean, it's like, why would you flip the burgers when you buy a restaurant, you would
Yeah.
hire a cook.
You hire a
Right?
cook. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good analogy. That's exactly what we
Yeah,
do.
you
So
can use that one.
yeah. I like that. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what niche you go. So we've got a website on pigeon racing, right? So I went, even though we studied zoology, I knew
Pardon
nothing.
me? Pigeon racing? Is that
Pigeon
what you
racing.
said?
It's huge. It's a huge sport.
Okay.
We never knew anything about it, but we just hire
Okay.
writers. There's actually only one writer that we've used, and someone passionate about pigeon racing has written all the articles for that website.
And again, you take a website, you renovate it, it has value
Yep.
because of the traffic. I know I'm maybe putting words into your mouth, but I'm a good student. Now you've got the affiliates that are driving a little bit of revenue. So yes, you
Yep.
can piece off a little bit of that for your copywriters.
Yeah. So what we do is it becomes a compounding machine. So for us, going back to the business idea, we've always loved investing in any kind of company, and we follow Warren Buffett. And I think if Warren knew about what we were doing, he would absolutely be blown away by how well these things compound, because every last cent we make off a click or an affiliate link goes back into content and rebuilding the site. But they very quickly compound and go exponential for the winners. When I say very quickly, let me put that in context. Traditional bricks and mortar businesses typically take, when we've bought and sold, like been involved in the sale of thousands of those, and all our friends do it. Typically, a bricks and mortar business will take anywhere from, normally the average age we saw where they got really successful is about 14 years. Takes a long time to get really successful with bricks and mortar. With website businesses, to get really successful, the best ones, I'm talking 6 and 7 figure, you're looking at just 5 years. It's about, under half the time we found with bricks and mortar, with online businesses, because online there's some big leverage advantages, and the main one is we have a worldwide market now. So in the past, when Liz and I started in business, we're stuck here in Australia, just like you're stuck in Canada, right? For us in Australia, it's really difficult with physical businesses to get beyond the borders of Australia. There's the tyranny of distance, and there's time zones, and there's border control and all that sort of stuff, and tariffs and things. Whereas online businesses, there are no borders. We've got instantly access to the world's biggest market, which is America, 300 million people, all looking for information online, and it's 24/7. So we literally wake up in the morning. I just did it this morning. I checked my emails. There's an email with, Matt, you've got money in your account. We make money while we sleep. It is beautiful. Check your bank account. There's an affiliate commission being paid. I just had 2 sales off one site in particular this morning before this podcast. And it's beautiful. And I don't speak to the clients. Never spoke. It's all hands off that side of it. Unlike bricks and mortar
So
businesses.
I think when I was mistakenly thinking online web business, I'm thinking that's something that's selling something, right?
No.
But behind that is inventory, blah, 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 blah. Like really,
No.
that's just,
Yeah, I should have
you're just talking about content sites.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that.
Okay.
Because of our background in manufacturing and wholesale import businesses, Liz and I made a pact with each other. When we went online, we said we are never, ever touching physical inventory again. So if you're listening to this and you think, don't do e-commerce, I'm going to be blunt about it. I know there's lots of courses out there and people, and you can make lots of money, but not as a beginner. Because don't make the mistake we made as young entrepreneurs. This is why, Garret, we're always skirting the edge of bankruptcy in business, because all our money's tied up in a warehouse somewhere in inventory. So why would you do that? And it's really complex. I'll be blunt about it. It is super complex doing that compared to what we do online. We do no e-commerce. We don't sell stuff on Amazon. We don't sell physical products at all. If we do sell physical products, it's as an affiliate. So we're happy to set up. So if there's, say vacuum cleaners or something like that, I would never sell physical vacuum cleaners because it costs lots of money to store them in a warehouse, right? But I'm happy to be an affiliate and send people over to Amazon to buy them, and we get an affiliate commission. So if you're listening to this, you can go and check out Amazon affiliate program. It's not the best. They only pay 4 or 5% commissions, but it's a really good spot to start as a beginner. So if you're tempted to sell physical inventory, physical products online, test it out first as an affiliate. because
Okay.
you don't have to invest money into stock. That's why this is so high cash flow. It frees up all our money to just reinvest back into the website, not into physical
Right,
inventory.
right. Okay, so the next thing then, speak to me about exit strategies, but I want you to put an emphasis on value. Okay, so
Okay.
said website that we buy off of a Facebook group for 5 grand.
Yep.
I mean, what are we talking about here? You said, I'm taking notes, 5 years, typical. You could turn around something into a 6 and 7 figure business.
Yep.
Who's buying these, and what does that look like for an exit?
Who's buying them? There's a lot of buyers now because everyone wants these. People are cottoning on to how beautiful these businesses are, and everyone wants to work from home and have the freedom to work whatever hours they want. So whilst these things aren't, you've got to do work on them, but you might only have to work on them once a week or something like that. So can you imagine? There's a lot of buyers that are looking for genuine, highly profitable online businesses. And there's thousands of buyers because we started on doing this. There were no website brokers. We bought our first website off eBay many, many years ago because the seller didn't know how to sell it.
Really?
So there was no brokers. These days, I've got an article on my site where there's 24 dedicated web online business brokers currently in the world. There's actually more than that, but they're the best known ones, and they sell thousands of websites every day. It's a big, big market. So who's buying them? Everyone from ma and pa's, real estate investors looking for high cash flow. But in particular, what's really interesting over the last 5 years, and we were taught this by our mentors too, is follow the big money. The big money's moved into this space now. So private equity firms,
Okay.
big and small. There's aggregators, big corporates are buying up. So a good friend of ours, he started online at the same time as us. Wait till you hear this story. He was passionate about cars and he always loved sports cars, but he came from nothing, started reviewing cars here in Australia, little old Australia, Garrett, built up a site called Car Advice. You can Google it. It sold 12 years later for $64 million reviewing
Wow.
cars. And he just test drives all the cars. He built that up into a big business. So he speaks at all our events every year. He's just built it up. So that's not selling physical inventory at all or anything. It's just talking about all the cool cars that he used to drive. It's called caradvice.com. It doesn't exist anymore. But what's interesting is a big corporate media company. So media companies are freaking out because they're losing all their traditional print media. So they're just buying up niche websites. And that's what we teach. The money's in the niche. So niches, unique niches like cars, reviewing cars. Now, what's really interesting about our friend Albors, he's gone and done it again. So now that the non-compete's over from that big corporate, he literally just restarted exactly the same website. It's called carexpert.com.au, and it's recently been valued at, he's got another big media company as one of his main investors, and it's valued at now over $100 million already. And that's only taken him 3-4 years this time to build that one up.
Holy cow.
Because he's rinse and repeat
Wow.
once you've got the knowledge. So
Sure.
there's a whole range of buyers from ma and pa's spending $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for websites up into the hundreds of millions now. And it's all in the niche. And the good news is, because you've got a worldwide market, we had to come to terms with this. You can go super niche, like pigeon racing, like one of our sites. I remember when Liz found that, I jokingly said to her, "You're not going to make money off pigeon racing. Like that, no one's into that." But it's super niche. That thing's made $1,000 a month for the last decade, so on autopilot, you don't touch it. And so you can go super niche, but because we've got this worldwide market of, potentially billions, but realistically, we look at the American market and the European market, and it's 24/7. The people are clicking around looking at really obscure stuff. That's the gold. And we've got sites that are, clients that have made heaps of money in, I love it, native Australian gardening. And again, Nathan and Alexa, a young couple, they do this full time. They found this site here in Australia, very niche, just an Aussie guy who's loved Australian natives. And he was just going to close the site down. They got it for $400. That thing makes $4,000 a month now, that site. just on Australian natives. So
Oh,
that's not even
wow.
with American traffic. So
Hmm.
there's all, and
So,
that's just selling information and like ads and affiliate products. That's it for gardening. So, they don't have to stock wheelbarrows and stuff. They recommend people buy certain wheelbarrows, and people click on a link. And if they buy it off the vendor, then Nathan and Alexa might get 5% of the sale price.
okay, let's draw some parallels to pricing. Okay. Real estate versus online real estate.
Yep.
Interest rates. I mean, there's so many different things that affect bricks and mortar real estate. What factors can skew a price to go up or down for a website? And do you find that there's any kind of, like, is it fairly flat or is it volatile?
Ooh, good question. It's grown over the last, so we've been doing this since 2008. It's grown significantly. So the multiple, so online businesses now sell for the same multiples as bricks and mortar businesses, which is 3 times. So typically
Okay.
a business will sell. So you were asking before about exits, and I didn't get to answer that. That's kind of answering both questions here. Is online business, if it makes $100,000 a year, you would expect it to sell for around $300,000. That's a starting point. So you can see the cash flows are really high, but it's just like a bricks and mortar business. So your question was, what is it volatile? I guess it can be. We started in the GFC. So, and it was also in a marketplace where no one knew the value of online assets. So it's kind of not a good comparison because there was no market. Like I said, we had to buy our first site off eBay. And then the main way we bought sites was literally virtual door knocking, just like we did with bricks and mortar business. We'd individually email people and see if they wanted to sell. Back then we were buying on a 1 times multiple. So we'd buy a site for 10 grand and we would get it making 10 grand like a year. Like, so we'd get our money back within a year. Now it's a 3 times multiple, but obviously we renovate. The goal is to renovate them and get your money back quicker. Volatility, website prices went up during COVID, like real estate did though. So I'm imagining it'll be like any bricks and mortar businesses. If the economy tanks, values might come down. But I also believe website values are going to stay high, particularly on the genuine high cash flow ones, because in a recession, what do people want? They want cash flow. So my experience with selling bricks and mortar businesses during recessions is high cash flow businesses are always highly valuable and highly sought after assets, particularly for high net worths or people with cash to buy those. So I don't see quality web assets being particularly volatile, but we'll wait and see what happens in the next recession. Generally, the value of websites have only gone up, though, particularly over the last 5 years, as everyone's cottoning on to this idea because of high cash flows. And the things that affect us, does that answer that part of the question for you, Garret?
It does, but let me follow up before you continue, Matt. If I'm the news agency that's going to pay 6, 7 figures for an established website, that now I'm buying it, basically that's like me buying, like, why would I buy a property that's been flipped from another investor? Of course, I want to buy the stinky, nasty property.
Yep.
So if you're buying high, I guess then it's the same thing. There's more risk there that it could go down.
Yep, but that's the opportunity. That's what we teach. You buy,
Yes.
as this is the beautiful thing about being online. We can niche this. We can go under the big guys. So it's funny, our friend Alborz with that car site, when he speaks at our events, he loves it. He says to everyone, guys, the best thing about online business is you can literally start out really small because the big corporates are useless. They don't want to put in all the work and stuff. They will pay out big money for when you get the site successful. And he said you can move more nimbler. Yeah, is that the word? Be more nimble, like quicker, and grow a site and renovate it. And there's much more upside. So what we actually teach is a really good sweet spot. There's a couple of sweet spots in buying websites, and one of them is under $50,000. There's not as much risk, but there's huge upside. So you can renovate that and sell out to a big guy. But so we teach you're trying to buy at value or undervalue, like buying diamonds in the rough. But sometimes it's worth paying full price for a website because the cash flows are so high. And what you've got to realize, coming back to your real estate analogy, it's like with real estate investors, people are prepared to pay top price for really good properties in really good suburbs, right? It's exactly the same
Yep.
online. I'm happy to pay the full
Location,
three.
location, location.
Yeah, location. Well, it's exactly the same online. I'm happy to pay 4 times multiple or 5 times multiple if the web site has certain characteristics and assets that are highly valuable, because I believe it's, if that website I think is going to be really successful over the next 5 years, I'll just pay the money, often to get into the niche or to get access to that audience. Because, Garret, now it's so much more competitive online in lots of niches. This is a really interesting question. We often say to our buyers, particularly if they're high net worth buyers, look, you want to get into this niche. Realistically, the only way to get into it is to buy a super successful website already with the traffic and then build on it from there. And so there's all sorts of reasons why people will pay top price for websites. And I think it's win-win. The buyer is not getting ripped off or anything like that. They're buying highly valuable assets. You could say it's at the peak of the market, but if you're getting a 30% ROI and you're getting massive cash flow off it, who cares? Especially if you're going to sit on it for 5 years, no one else can have that asset. I mean, there's certain sites that are just irreplaceable and they're worth that money. If you want it, you've got to stump up the money. But if you're an entrepreneur, guerrilla entrepreneur, and like to find diamonds in the rough, then you would stick under $50,000 and find the diamonds in the rough and fix them up. So there's opportunities for both, I think.
What about acquiring a website? I mean, I understand how to buy a URL.
Yep.
Is it literally that simple?
Yep. Well, there's a few things you got to learn. It's not for,
Of course.
You've got to know what you're doing, but you can just go to, if you're listening to this and you want to just go and check it out, go to flipper.com or just Google website brokers, or go onto our website. We've got an article with the 24 top website brokers. I would buy first small. You learn on a site under $5,000. That's what we teach. And we teach people how to do it. But there's lots of things you've got to learn if you've never been online before or had a successful online business. And so we teach that. We're passionate about it. We've been doing this for 30 odd years. And it's a rare skill to understand how to buy websites. And I think it's really simple and it's really easy. We teach beginners how to do it, but you've got to learn how to do due diligence on a website. There's definitely certain things you need to look for. It would be really silly if you're listening to this and you rush out and bought a 6-figure website or even a site under $50,000 without learning a few things first.
Of course.
But essentially, though, once you know what you're doing, to answer your question, it's just like buying a bricks and mortar business. You go through a broker. There's heaps of brokers out there that are really good. Or our favorite strategy is private approach. So we get to know certain niches really well, just like we used to with the industrial businesses we used to buy. And we literally go virtual door knocking. You just send an email and say, hey, we're cash buyers. Have you ever considered selling your website? And you start the conversation that way, or through networking. Often we get a lot of clients now, plus ourselves. You get people approaching you saying, hey, I hear you're into buying websites. I've got this site. I've had it for 10 years. I just want to sell it. What's it worth? And so you can get it through networking as well. But realistically, the best way is through the brokers. The brokers these days are awesome. There's heaps of website brokers out there, and they can help with the purchase and stuff like that.
Okay. Why don't you spend the last few minutes of the podcast kind of, we've talked about mentors. It's very obvious that you teach people how to do this. Yep. Walk us through, do you have a course? Are you coaching? Is it a platform? What is it?
So we have several courses, and we've been teaching this for over a decade now. And we teach beginners because when we start online, we made lots of mistakes. We're really passionate and we're hopeless online, the technical side. The main thing that people need to learn is how to do due diligence, but also a little bit of technical stuff, like actually how to build a website, how to post an article, how SEO works, but also how monetization works. So that's where we love teaching beginners that sort of a thing. And we have a basic course called not a basic course, it's a really good course called Digital Investor Program. It's our signature course, sorry. And we also have a basic course called Web Dev Accelerate, which teaches people how to build a website. Because when you know how to build a website from scratch, what we found is people do much better due diligence on websites, and they're much better at identifying, because there's work that goes into building a website, and there's value just in that alone. So we find that if you want to learn this, we would recommend you learn how to build a website, and then also learn how to do due diligence. And that's what our signature program called the Digital Investor Program does. And we just take people through from the start through to, we get them started buying sites under $5,000, simple little small sites, learn how it works, get a bit of cash flow, see that money come into your bank account while you sleep. That's pretty exciting for most people. And what we've found, Garret, these days is a lot of our clients are white collar or high income earners. And so we help them. A lot of people want to quit their jobs because they're burnout. I've never seen so much burnout in all the years. And so we just help people transition out of their careers, but over time. So we suggest you don't quit your job, because you don't have to. You can do this as a side hustle. Just do it in the evenings, a couple of hours a week. It's like studying a diploma or something. And you just buy a small, simple site, because websites you can park them and forget them. So the cool thing is you don't have to work on them every day like a bricks and mortar business. You don't have to turn up. You just buy it. You can learn on it, renovate it, do a bit of work each week, and just see if you like it, see if it works. If you can double the revenues or something like that, then you go, all right. Then we say to you, we'll step it up to the next level, start buying bigger sites, try and find diamonds in the rough under 50,000, build it up over a couple of years. And we teach a strategy of that, and then sell it out to a corporate for 6 figures or whatever. That's what we did. 6 or 7 figures.
So cool. That, like I said, I love the podcast because it just teaches me so many different things.
Yeah. It is pretty cool, isn't it? We're the same on our podcast.
Well, it is.
We on our podcast, we mainly interview our clients that have done this. And that's the other thing. If someone's listening to this, you don't have to do our course. Just go and listen to all the experiences of our clients. The other interesting strategy that we do teach, though, because it's been so effective, is, and you'll hear it on our podcast, a lot of our students who want to quit quickly use their web building skills to build websites for small businesses. And that's been hugely effective. And what's happening in that space is, again, this is just literally in the last year or so, we are now seeing big corporates, big buyers with deep pockets buying up little micro digital agencies that are building websites for small businesses because it's so valuable. And again, that can be hugely leveraged as well. That's a whole nother strategy in itself, but it's really effective. So that's another thing. I just mentioned that because you'll hear that on our podcast. We've just started talking about that quite a bit. That's a new, like our mentor said to us years ago, follow the money. I can't ignore it. We've got all the website brokers saying to us, hey, if you've got clients that are building websites for local businesses, we got heaps of buyers. We're ready to spend millions of dollars cash for those sorts of agencies, I guess you call them. Because you know what they're after? It's like anything in business. The gold is recurring revenues, like Robert Kiyosaki taught all those years ago. It's funny, recurring revenues, you know how you're asking how do you value even a bricks and mortar business or online business? If it's got recurring values, the multipliers just go up straight away.
They do.
Recurring
income. You don't have to work at quite as hard, right?
Yeah, and that's why, like in rent rolls now, in the real estate, I've got a friend that just sold out for 7 figures here in Australia. He's he's talking about he had a big rent roll, and I was asking him who bought it, and it was a corporate, high net worth private equity firm. Because why? Recurring revenues. It's just, and so that's what we're really passionate about teaching. And I'd like to say, Garret, that I reckon it's easier with online businesses to get the recurring revenues than you guys work hard to get those rent rolls. They're hugely valuable.
I would agree.
It's the same concept though. So here's with us, Garret, just to make you a bit jealous, our rent rolls, right? We don't talk to the clients. It's just, we get regular recurring, and you can sell memberships. So there's all sorts of ways you can get recurring revenues online, but it's so much easier than bricks and mortar.
Well, I mean, I'll draw one more comparison before we finish. I mean, if I'm doing, any kind of real estate right now. Okay. So let's say that I have a duplex. I have to put 70, 80, 90K down. I have to obviously have some risk there, personally guarantee a $300,000-$400,000 mortgage. Then I have to find somebody else to fund me for the renovations.
Yeah.
We had we discussed in pre-show about the cost of
Oh,
contractors.
yeah.
And then there's a 6, 8, 9 month
Yep.
process. And then at the end of the day, now I have to refinance, and who knows what's happening with the interest rates. And then I have to rent it out to a tenant who may or may not destroy the property or pay me my
Yeah,
rent.
that's right.
If I go and turn around my 80, 90K, take your course, I'm sure I can buy quite a nice
Oh, yeah.
website for 80, 90K, renovate it in 2 or 3
Yep.
months with little risk. And then, I mean, the value add is going to be comparable or better
Yeah.
from what
So
I'm hearing you saying.
Liz and I looked recently at a real estate deal because we've had some mentors say to us we need to diversify our portfolio back into some real estate again, away from businesses. But we couldn't make the figures stack up. We're looking at a 2 million development deal that someone was running through the figures with us, but at the end of it, they're only going to make 200 grand. And that's if all these things line up, plus with the banks and stuff. And you're thinking this could, and they're saying the build would only take 12 months. And we're thinking, no, it's not. That could blow out more. For 200 grand, outlaying that sort of money, I'm just going back to buying online businesses. It was way too much risk. But that's not to say real estate now is it's a different vehicle. It's a really good store of wealth. But for us personally, because we're just such, look at the cash flows, we're going exactly what you said. I can buy even a site for 100 grand. If I can double it, I'm going to make 200 grand just off that website. Now, we're very experienced. If you're listening to this, as a beginner, you will not get those returns. And those returns aren't typical. But once you build up your experience level, and the other thing you just touched on, something that we're really sensitive about is dealing with banks, because we've nearly been bust a few times being in business, and we're always in debt to banks. The day we got online, we don't involve banks at all. It's all cash flow positive from day one. So we only invest money in cash flow businesses, online businesses, and we do it with no debt. So we're not borrowing, so we don't go over the top. And if you're listening to this, I'd recommend you do the same. If not giving financial advice, but the reason is you don't rush out and buy a 6-figure website or anything silly like that. Just start out small, buy a site under $5,000 and learn the ropes. That's the easiest thing, because it always takes
learn the
longer.
Ropes, build up a reserve.
It always takes longer than what you think. That's what we found with our clients. It's not a get rich quick thing. These sites don't magically turn around in 2 to 3 months. Those days are gone. It takes now, I'll be blunt about it takes a good 12 months plus, but it's the perfect way to transition or build a side hustle whilst you're still building, whilst you're learning your skills. So that's why we say to people, don't quit your job, commit to this for the long term. And it's a really, really nice alternative asset class to real estate. Because I know a lot of your listeners are into real estate, and it's super smart doing real estate. But if you get this could just be, maybe just treat it as, instead of buying your next property, have a crack at a website.
Different asset class. Absolutely. I think it's important for everybody to diversify. You shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket. Yep. Like I said, I didn't even know this existed. And when your agent reached out to me and I'm reading this, I'm going, my goodness, couldn't wait to get going on to the interview. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, that's a great place to stop. But as my listeners know, I ask every guest this question, and I want to hear what you have to say. Yep. Matt, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you?
I'm going to go off my gut feel for Liz and I think I touched on it early in the podcast. It's not just about wealth and cash flow and everything like that. It's about wealth, health, and happiness. That's Liz and I live by that. We've always sought out mentors. So winning for us, or success for us, is, being financially free, being able to work the hours we want and wherever we want, but also it's about having happy family. So we've got 2 young kids, and we're really proud of that, and having a close marriage, and then also maintaining our health. We're in our 50s and we want to stay nice and healthy and happy. And then it's about community, who we hang around. So that's what success is for us.
Very well said. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with me. I learned a ton.
Thanks so much for having me on, Garret. Definitely a pleasure to be here.